Well, hello, welcome everyone. I'm John Lay from Talented Learning, and we also have Mike Martin here from
Hey, everybody.
SAP Litmus. We're on either side of the country right now. We'll talk about that in a second as we present today's topic inside the customer learning life cycle and how continuous education drives lasting value. And this is just a great topic, near and dear to my heart. At Talented Learning, we study the learning technology marketplace, and in our view, the customer learning segment and the customer learning technology segment is by far the hottest segment in the marketplace. And I believe, and we believe, has a lot to do with the measurable nature of that and using customer learning as a competitive advantage, a tool to reduce time to value and to increase the lifetime value of customers, as well as increase sales and increase customer satisfaction, and do a lot of really good measurable things to the business. And that's really different than HR type or employee-based learning systems for a variety of reasons. One, the requirements, we'll talk about that a little bit, are different because of the different audiences. The tech ecosystem and integrations are different. The system owners and the budgets are different. But probably the most important thing between the HR employee and the customer learning cycle is that in customer learning, we've got a lot of help inside the organization. Most organizations are aware of their pipeline, their prospects, their customers, the sales process, the marketing, the unique differentiators, the customer journey, and the customer experience in general of their customers. And so that's known knowledge. And so what we're going to talk about today, Mike and I, is to go through how the customer learning life cycle can leverage on and basically overlay that same, or does overlay that same process. We're going to talk about a variety of things in a question and answer format. Talk about multiple audiences. We're going to talk about how to prioritize customer needs. We're going to talk about creating business cases and choosing the right tools and the different types of requirements and how to deploy and how to improve and how we evaluate and improve our impact and generally how we improve over time from a life cycle standpoint. So we're going to look at that from a variety of different perspectives as we'll talk to and make a conversation. We got about 60 minutes today, 57 more minutes. We're going to save the last 10 or so for your questions. So go ahead and enter questions in the whole time. This is really going to be interactive. We didn't prepare slides that we were going to preach at you the whole time, but we're going to talk and have a conversation. And Mike and I are going to ask each other questions and answer from our perspective, and we're going to work in your questions. And we have, I believe, 7 different polls that will also thread into the conversation. So all in all, it'll be a nice interactive presentation today, and hopefully you'll walk away with a lot of real life actionable advice here. If you want to claim CAE credit, if that's important to you, just send me an email afterwards at johnlay@talentedlearning.com, and I'll make sure you get your certificate, and we will take care of the webinar replay. Make sure you get a copy of that. Talented Learning is producing the webinar today. We have a monthly webinar series. This is our 45th in a row installment of monthly webinars. So we continue to bring independent research to the marketplace about all things learning technology, but especially extended enterprise and customer learning and externally facing learning technology is our specialty. And we do all that really to help LMS buyers buy better in extended enterprise and succeed in using learning technology outside of HR and training. You find more of our resources at talentedlearning.com, and you already see our faces there from a video standpoint. So you may be thinking, well, who could be possibly qualified to talk about all these different things and answer? And so here are your presenters today. As I said, I'm John Lay. I'm the CEO and lead analyst at Talented Learning. I founded it 6 years ago to study the learning technology and extended enterprise marketplace and customer learning marketplace. I've been in the extended enterprise market for almost 25 years. And all of that, I've been watching the progress and the successes and the failures of enterprise learning technology that's either targeted directly at external audiences or incorporated holistically into a broader system. And so that's my background, but more importantly, I'm here today with Mike Martin, who's Chief Learning Officer at SAP Litmus. And I'll let Mike introduce himself.
Hey everybody, I'm a longtime Litmus customer and also the Chief Learning Officer. And actually, I've just taken over more of the customer experience side as well. So I'm excited to be really ingrained in this world here. So been at it for about 20 years, either going through all the motions from being an instructional designer to running teams and building departments, all the way to where I am today. And I'm taking a break from the action here at the DevLearn conference here in lovely Las Vegas. You can see the Paris Hotel right there and some other things going on in the background. Yeah, so taking a break from the action from down here, meeting all of the people that are my peers and people I hang out with to talk to you today. I'm really excited to be here.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Mike. What's interesting about our perspectives today is I'm going to come at it from an analyst standpoint of looking at lots and lots of different organizations that do this with lots and lots of different technology and kind of share broad perspectives based on that experience. But Mike comes at it from a doer perspective as a customer, and then he comes at it from the CLO of having his own customers at SAP Litmus. Lots and lots of LMS customers that need to be trained and onboarded and driven to proficiency. And as a side benefit, those customers are often buying SAP Litmus to do their own customer education.
That's right.
Mike gets to see it from that perspective. So if we don't got it covered right now in customer learning, I don't know who is. So we'll continue. We'll lay that line down. All right, tell us a little bit quick about Litmus, Mike, please.
Great. SAP Litmus, we're one of the leaders in the LMS space. We also have a content arm where you can buy off the shelf content in compliance and soft skills, those types of things, when you don't have the time or energy to build them yourselves and you want something solid that you can just roll out in your own LMS or with ours. We really focus in on that customer focused enterprises. We are really focused on outside, like John was saying, we're talking about sales groups, external partners, customer training, anything to that effect. So we're really excited to be presenting here today and talking a little bit about our product and the processes that we go through to train our customers on how to use it.
All right, outstanding. Well, let's get started with our first poll. So we got a nice diverse audience. We had registrants from every corner of the world here today, both from vendor, practitioner, academic, consultant perspectives.
Wow.
So let's see. I know it's fantastic. What a
Exciting.
topic. But let's see what our audience is. How do you define your audience, or maybe broader? What audiences are you responsible, or your organization responsible for training? Just customers only, or employees only? Channel partners only, or several, or all of the above, or as always, put the other in the question panes if you have some other combination of that. Combinations, all of those exist, don't they, Mike? I think everybody, there might be equal numbers of all of these around. By the way, we do speed polling here on the webinars. You got to be quick, or we'll miss your feedback. So look at that. So that's great. So 17% customer only.
Employees only.
0% channel partner only. Well, we did
no channel partners. Wow.
We did advertise on customers, but typically you see customers and channel partners, two sides of the same coin a lot of times in the training. And of course, lots of employee only systems, 27%. But a lot of them, like, well, I won't spoil it, but like one of us here, 53% of us thinks like one of us. So let's start off with that. You know, how many LMSs in your organization? This is a great topic. I hear this all the time. As I said, we help as a consulting business in our research. We help organizations define their requirements and buy extended enterprise learning management systems. And inevitably, I get the question, well, do we want one for all of our audiences, or just our external audiences, or just our customers, or just our customers per business line? And, what's the best practice in the industry? And that's a tough question to answer, but Mike, how about I give you first shot? How do you guys think about it for your own learning? Maybe tell us a little bit about your learning environment, and then, how you approached it from how many LMS standpoint.
You bet. Well, we always look at the LMS as the central place for everything to start from. So where we put all of the content, where we serve it out, where we report on it, one ring to rule them all type thing for customer training. to be specific. And for Limis, it's no different for us. I mean, we obviously have customers that we want to become really competent and confident in the product as quickly as possible. And so for us, when we look at it, it's a simplicity question. It comes down to simplicity for the admin and the learner, and it comes down to that overall learning experience for us. Now, we don't have a lot of different lines of business or different things where our customers would need different branding and they would want to see it a certain way. It's all pretty much, you learn the product the same way, you learn about it the same way, and then we have our live folks, our mentors and such, work with you if you are maybe in healthcare, how you want to spin things a little bit. But for simplicity, we have one, our thing is we have one LMS, and we actually have the one LMS not only for all of our customers, but for our staff too. And the reason for that is because if you think about it, to have all the content in one place, for us anyway, this is our strategy because it fits our model, is to have it all in one place, that anytime we do updates or anything like that, it's very simple because it's all in one place and we don't have to update it in multiple LMSs or whatnot. So for us, it makes it really easy to do that. But I mean, it comes down to, again, whether you need to brand something different, you want to have a completely different experience, you want to completely separate the reporting for something, you might have a different one. But for us, since we're training a lot of, I mean, all external people here for our customers and such, we also wanted to pair that with the internal side so that our staff are getting the exact same thing that our customers are getting, so they can have those great conversations.
Mm-hmm.
The one for us, yeah, that would be the, but I can see where, you know, for you as an analyst, I mean, do you see a clearly preferred strategy there? Because I know I also talk, and I've been talking to a lot of people at this conference who are saying, yeah, we might have 3 LMSs, one for our internal employees that's integrated into our HRIS system, and then one that's maybe for channel partners and customers and such. So how about for you? Do you see any clear preferred strategy, or is there an approach that's most common?
Yeah, no, good question. I said I get that a lot. I just got off a consulting call yesterday where they had identified 57 different systems around the globe that supported any combination of customer, channel, employee learning, and different flavors, business lines, and languages around. So, you know, it's not uncommon to run into big global organizations that have that very fractured approach. But I went back from Talented Learning. We help lots and lots of people informally and with our free content. But we've put about just about 60 clients now through an A to Z process that helps develop requirements. In preparation of this webinar, I went back just to look of how all of them decided, and it was all but equal, 50-50 of those that were taking multiple systems and putting it into one system versus organizations that were going the other way and deploying just a specialized system. So at least based on our experience and research, we see you know, equal paths. And so I was thinking about that, you know, why could that be? And I think one of the reasons, for one, like you said, is you don't have a lot of lines of business, and you know, you're not a smaller organization, but small enough that it's manageable, that you know, it's run by the same department, you have the same budget cycle. And so, you know, that enables organizations, when they have that ability, to do a one for all audiences, and that's really good. Other organizations that have really strong governance also, so they've always worked together, they tend to be organizations that do it holistically. If one of those 2 scenarios don't hold true, though, inevitably the business units will go off by themselves. And what's unique about all of that is if you choose a holistic system versus choose a business unit system, the whole process is different, the buyers are different, and so are the systems that they choose, coincidentally. So it's really interesting to see that question is not quite sorted out yet in the industry. And maybe we'll use this as a proof point here for everybody. For those, we got another one. Go ahead and launch this next poll, please.
Let's see what happens.
We'll see what happens here, but certainly if you're only training employees, really for the 53%, this poll's for those 53% primarily that that's training multiple audiences or some combination of that. Are you using just one LMS, or are you using a variety of LMSs? Okay, so we close that up.
Okay. One for all. Yeah.
Showing pair results, 43% almost going. So the majority, a lot of that 53%, or half of them. So a way that you could look at that is almost half of that 53% there is using one system, which means the other half certainly isn't. So that's pretty consistent.
Yeah, for us, that the same system but different instances. We do that as well too with child accounts for that. So you'll see that a lot with us as well, because that makes a lot of sense too. So they can have that, but still be in the same systems. I just, it comes back down to simplicity, right? The simpler you can make it, but the more complex your organization, as you stated, John, I think that's very important to restate, right? The more complex it is, the more the departments don't talk to each other, or they have very different goals, then you're going to start to see those 56, where everyone's kind of going their own way, and it takes a lot just to build it all together and become one system.
I think the other piece is because of many systems and the complexity politically from that, but also because each one of those customer or externally facing initiatives in those customer organizations, they're adding value and they're measuring, like I described starting off, and they've built that business case. So nobody wants to be in second in line or third in line,
Sure.
or 10th in line or 57th in line on what your priorities or enhancements for the system or the next thing you want to roll out. And so that's the other factor of just trying to get to the front of the line. Organizations can buy it, and you can buy it quickly and deploy quickly. A lot of times they can almost sneak a system through before the broader organization even knows. That we do see that. But regardless, whoever's buying a system, with employee learning, Mike and audience, it's in some ways it's easier, because if you have employees, you need an LMS, because you have to manage your compliance and your mandatory training.
Exactly.
Past a handful of users, it's impractical to try to do any of that with a spreadsheet or any other manual process. So the business case for that for most organizations is easy, but for the external, there's no buying of external systems without putting together a convincing business case. It happens
That's right.
every single time, because there has to be a reason why you do it. You just don't sign up for this extra work outside the marketing and sales discipline. Something new that you have to learn just for fun. So it's almost always built
Yeah.
on some fundamental business. So let's take a step back. What was the business case for you guys, SAP Litmus, to build the dojo? And from that standpoint, did you look at this as a revenue operation to sell content and certifications, or is it something that was included into sale to try to impact key business metrics? Like, every organization is different. I'd love to hear how you guys thought about rolling that out and building your business case to get this sold initially.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So the dojo, just to be clear, is our digital strategy for creating a place where people can come and take all of the training to learn how to use our product. So it was clear from the very beginning for us that we wanted to enable users through a digital strategy, as I said, to get the best training and support possible 24/7, 365, right? We want to make sure that there's a place that people can go, that we can drive them there. And it can be used not only as a standalone product or place where people can learn, but also as a place where we can really create that tight blended approach where we have our folks go and learn a little bit about dashboards and admin procedures, and then they meet with their mentor and talk about those things, so that it's very much using the best instructional design techniques to be able to bring those together, right? Because we're adults, and there are a lot of things that we can do on our own, and we can learn on our own what this button does, what that button does, and then when you come together with your mentor, you come together with somebody live, you can talk use cases. Then you're past this is what the button does. You're now like, let me show you what it can do for you, and let's figure out how you want to use it. But so for us, to really think about it as a business case, though, it was just clear that we wanted to reduce the time to value, wanted people to be able to get there really quickly. And the product is very simple. That was one of the reasons that back in 2011, I adopted it for the retailer that I was working for and built my whole department around it. It was because of its simplicity and power. But and it reduced the time to value, and it reduced the ticket volume that comes in, right? So that if we have a place where people can self-learn on what this function does or that function does, it drastically reduces the amount of time they call our support or send in tickets. So, and then a few other ones real quickly, increasing the adoption and reducing churn, are really big for us, because a happy customer is one that might not leave, right? And they're also one who gets what information they need when they need it. And to be able to offer that without them having to call in is just a phenomenal thing as well. And then finally, like again, reduce the call times, right? So a good example of this, a quick little story. One of our mentors, they had sent them to the dojo to learn about what they were going to talk about in that call, in their very first or the second call. And when they got on the phone, our mentor said, all right, so you have any questions about this? And usually there are a ton. Once they started using the dojo and that digital strategy, the person's like, nope, I think I'm really good. And so then our mentor quizzed them a little bit, and they're like, no, yeah, I know that, and this is how you do that. And so in 15 minutes instead of an hour, they were able to get everything that they wanted done, just because they were able to add that blended approach, that piece, that digital strategy on the front end. So these are the things that you can see from a business case you want to start looking at and understanding, like what levers am I trying to push, or needles am I trying to move would be a better way to put it. And then figuring out how you get there from that. But for our particular situation, it was really that competence, confidence, reducing the volumes or time to value, and so on, as I talked about.
Wow, excellent. That's a pretty thorough example of the different areas that you can measure, and every single one of those, I've heard multiple times from other clients of all the things from time to proficiency, reducing churn.
Yep.
Without a doubt, everybody thinks the same, and it's proven time and time again, fiscally, that the cost to replace a customer far out, find a new one and replace one, far out exceeds making a customer enthusiastically successful and happy. And so,
Two more quick points on this. Just because you had asked me about the cost of it as well. It's absolutely built into, so I just wanted to answer that part too, is it's built in, it's free to our customers, because we want them to get there. We don't feel like, at least right now, that it's one of those things where they need to pay extra for that hand holding. We want to make sure that they have access to this all of the time, and that it's a free resource. So that's how that works. And remember too, that the second point would be that we do look at the dojo as part of the ecosystem, right? It's part of a larger approach to training our customers and keeping them happy. It's not just this one thing that we say, all right, everybody to the dojo, everybody to the dojo. It's just, that's not, it's a part of it, right? It's like to the dojo, and then you have all these other pieces that we'll talk about later that help reinforce and help our customers down the road too. Because so those of you out there, I mean, it's not just that's gonna be the only thing, the holy grail that's gonna win everything. It has to be part of. It's part of, but it's a big part of.
Yeah, definitely. So, from a metric standpoint, that's it. I think the only point I would add to that, or two couple of points. The reason this is so measurable and so easy to measure any of those metrics that Mike mentioned is because it's straightforward to measure which customers took training or certification or whatever intervention that you define, and which ones didn't, and to see how they performed in all those different areas. And that type of data is easily available. Any of the sales or business data is data that's much easier available than typical training data is. So it's really easy to get at that, not just measure and impact one metric, but a series of metrics for your organization. And thinking of it in that broader approach allows you to build more value internally and also demonstrate that value internally. There's also metrics just from a process standpoint, though, of a lot of organizations have been doing customer learning long before LMSs. And so, they're doing it through training centers or brick and mortar, or still it's not uncommon for me to see organizations that send trainers out for thousands or tens of thousands of courses in a given year around the country. So just the normal practical needs of switching to digital and getting business value from that side of economies of scale and reduced cost expenditures. And so we see a lot of that. And then finally, like 6 years ago, when I first started down to learning and I was studying this, many organizations that were doing customer learning were the proactive ones. They were the ones that saw the writing on the wall and were like, this is something that we could really use to do a competitive differentiation. Now what I see in 2019 is all the organizations that didn't do that now find themselves at a competitive disadvantage. So there's lots of organizations scrambling to catch up in this. And so a lot of it's around the business case being either whether that's proactive or reactive.
And I think technology has been a really good thing for this too. As you can see right now, you can see us, you can hear us well. You're at the comfort of your office or home or wherever you are. we're able to bridge a lot of gaps now that we couldn't before, that we can jump on and be everywhere at once. I mean, there's even a business here on the show floor that they don't even have an office anymore. They've decided to shut it down, and everyone works remote like this. And this is the new thing. You know, it's pretty intense to see how things are changing so much to be able to do this. So just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to add that
Yeah.
as a
Yeah, no doubt, no
piece.
doubt. Hey, well, we got a new poll here. Let's launch this up. What kind of pricing do you prefer for your education? Free or fee-based, or included in the sale, or not sure? Go ahead and answer that. But uh, you know,
Yeah.
another trend or thing that changed is, years ago it used to be a lot more fee-based. Uh, uh, Even in my career, we always sold additional, not for electronic, but always additional for LMS training sessions and to send a trainer out. But I think 6 years ago, when organizations were on that cusp of trying to prove the value of customer
Mhm.
learning, there was a lot of revenue tied to that. Let's try to generate a revenue stream. But as that reactive push, all those organizations have found that they're behind. We see a lot more now included in the sale for the good of the customer and the good of the value of reduced churn.
Yeah.
So it's neat to see even something as fundamental of that change pretty quickly over time. And so
It's a bigger picture, right? It's not just the let's go ahead and charge for this and that's going to be the revenue stream and that's what we're going to be looking at. But it's a bigger picture to say if we keep these people happy, even if we don't charge for it, they're going to give us a lot more on the back end, right? They're going to stick around longer and they're going to tell their friends about us, their friends in business. And so I think it's just a different approach to it.
yeah, well, maximizing that life cycle and that life cycle efficiency. But look at these results: free for all,
Yeah.
36%, or 33,
33.
36% included. So there we have right there almost what's that,
Yeah.
70% that
Mhm.
are following that trend I just described.
Yeah.
14% fee based, certainly for sure. If you have a content business, it's always fee based. So
Right.
if content is your business, then that's more. And let's just see if anybody entered that into the pane. Looks like we have 9%. Just special needs in custom cases, it looks like. So,
Right.
all right, great. Well, let's continue
Well,
moving
John,
on.
you've been asking me a lot of questions first. How about I ask you one first? You good with that? I'm gonna
Yeah,
turn the
let's go.
tables. I'm gonna flip the script on you here. So, how do you see organizations define their customer learning system requirements? How do they do different things from typical employee LMS requirements? Like when you talk to people or you're seeing that, how do they define those, or what does that look like?
Yeah, it's a big challenge. I see everything from excellent to horrible, and everything and everything in between, in defining the requirements. And so there's not a lot of guidance. I think one, let's just start off that if you're not doing a holistic deployment, uh, when an organization does a holistic deployment, let me rephrase that. When they do that, almost exclusively that's being driven by the HR and training folks. So it's
I
an
see.
existing system, and they push out. And those folks are better at choosing learning systems because they've been doing it for 30 years, theoretically. So the process of defining your requirements, working through your use cases, documenting that into your use cases and your requirements into a request for proposal, and doing a mature evaluation of the market to select a system is certainly one of consequence. But extended enterprise, they have a different challenge because a lot of the professionals that are buying, especially if they're doing business unit, don't come from the HR and training world. They come from sales and marketing and customer service and channel marketing. And those organizations know plenty about marketing and plenty about customer service, but typically they're not running around with masters and PhDs in online learning or the equivalent. And so those organizations have a much more difficult time to try to find the requirements. But it's important to go through that process. Really, the process, though, whether you're experiencing it or not, is identical of starting with your business metrics and your business use case, what you're trying to accomplish, and then rolling that into the actual measurable success criteria and the audiences that you want to try to impact, and what are the use cases of them interacting in their life cycle that may or may not exist, as we talked about their customer experience life cycle, and then what are the features that need to support the delivering a training to them. And so to kind of go that step by step, because what you'll find is that from an internal LMS standpoint, they need a lot of things that externally you don't necessarily need. Internal are worried about compliance and compliance dates and being in compliance and in succession planning and career development and
Mm-hmm.
those type of things.
The whole suite.
The whole suite and extended enterprise are worried about selling more and time to proficiency and so that's different. And in internal employees, they almost always have off-the-shelf content that meets a lot of their needs. But in extended enterprise, it's always proprietary content because it's about your products and services. So the need to create content and create custom content, for example, is much more important inside extended enterprise. And a lot of times you'll see that in the extended enterprise system. So in a long-winded way, to select the system that's right for you, organizations have to take the time to prepare and understand their use cases and the resulting requirements for that. And as we'll talk about in just a minute, how to snap into the broader ecosystem, the broader ecosystem of the what exists inside an organization. And so, with all that being said, turn the tables right back on you because I like to be the interviewer more than the interviewee in most cases. You know, are those requirements different for you? Do you find that it's the same for your employees versus external? Did you what process did you go through to define that? And how important really was the difference between those audiences as you think about your life and content and the life cycle of your customers?
That's a great question. And like I said, we use the same instance to train all of our external partners, our channel partners, our customers, and so forth, as we do our staff. And within SAP Litmus, we can actually do that, and it's just fine. We can keep some stuff separate from others, where the customer sees things, or our staff see things that the customers can't. We can enable different things like the certifications and all of those things that you're talking about on our staff side, right? And the compliance and all of those things that we don't necessarily need for the customers, because we just want them to have a seamless experience to enjoy the content and learn and be able to use the product as determined. So I mean, for us, we're able to do that in both of them, but we did have to look at it differently, John. I think that's what you're talking about here, right? It's not, we did have to look at them very differently and say, well, what do they need versus what do they need? And can we do that in the same one? And with our product, certainly could, but then there might be other places where that can't happen and they're separate systems. But for us, I mean, our big ecosystem, I mean, we use a lot of different tools and a lot of different things to make our learning world go round for our customers, for sure.
Yeah, one of the audience here was talking, said reporting.
Yeah.
Is really, I think it's important for both sides, but probably the difference is the reporting for extended is the combination of reporting with business data. And so that's the extra step that you'll see is that's great. This training completion and success and content access is wonderful, but now let's overlay sales data and see what the impact was. And that extra piece is something that you'll certainly see in some other ones. I guess to wrap up, how to choose effective tools, not to be self-serving, but if if your requirements or what you're trying to do is complex with lots of balls in the air and lots of audiences, you probably should get some help from an outside consulting or consulting firm of various types to help you think through that, and somebody that's up to speed. If this is your first time out, there's a lot of applications out there that have free trials on the web where you can use that as a way to develop your requirements and think through your requirements by seeing what's out there already. So sometimes if you're doing it your first time around, you do have, I think, more elbow room to choose the effective tools than when you have a lot of longstanding pieces in play that you have to adapt around. So.
Yeah, and you don't know what you don't know what you don't know if you're just starting out as well. So that's what I'm seeing a lot of here at the show at DevLearn. People walking around like this. I'm brand new to this, and their eyes are big, and the show is the exhibit hall is just massive, and they're just walking around thinking, where do I even start, right? So it can be overwhelming, but I think that what you're talking about is really getting down to the brass tacks of what do we want to do, and then what's going to be the results, and let's start there. Always start there and work backwards. I mean, I don't want to overcomplicate this issue. I think we always do. It's like, well, we need all these things. Well, no, let's just start. Like, just simply, what at the end of the day, what are the like there's three things that need to happen here. Okay,
Yeah.
how in order to do that, what do we need to do? And then what do we need to do? And then what is that? And then what tools do we need to build that house or work on that car? Or they might be different depending on what you're trying to do.
Hmm. If you do work use cases, we got to move on and stop piling on this very important point. But if you do use cases and you work back to the requirements, what you inevitably end up with is a smaller set of requirements. Conversely, what a lot of organizations do as a mistake is they Google
They want everything.
LMS requirements, and yeah, and then they get the
They want it all.
spreadsheet with 1,001 requirements, and that spreadsheet has a column that says, nice to have or mandatory. And left to their own devices, if you don't know anything, you end up with 997 mandatories because you're like, well, geez, I don't want to say I don't need that. I might need that. How am I going to know if I need that in 3 years? And so when that's the case, you got to buy the most comprehensive systems, which are the most expensive. And you spend most of your time turning features off to get to your use case than it is to just
Yeah.
buy what you need in the first place. So
Just one last comment because it just brought it to mind, and sorry, I know, one more, then we'll move on.
one more.
I just love it. It reminds me of that old computer commercial where that you see in the back of the person, and then they're asking the question like, oh, is that the new Pentium, whatever? I'm like, it's like, does it have 25 gigs? Yeah. Does it have this? Yeah. What are you doing? Playing solitaire. they're like doing the bare minimum with this like Ferrari of a computer, right? Like, or whatever it was. It just reminds me of that because I feel that
Same.
too, that when people come to us, they're like, we want everything. I'm like, well, what do you actually want to do? Well, we just need to get courses out to this customer base and report on it. Okay, then you don't need all of the, let's start there and then move up. So moving on.
There you
Sorry,
go.
stay
Simple
focused.
advice. Simple advice.
Playing solitaire.
Hard to follow, though. Hard to
I
follow.
know, right? Like we always.
All right, so we're talking, so most ecosystems, Mike and audience here, they have, of course, have an LMS, not of course, but generally an LMS. That's the
Yeah.
backbone to run all this. That's that's the keystone piece that puts in. But there's a lot of other tools that are part of the ecosystem. We mentioned that, from an internal employee standpoint, sometimes they're a little bit more limited. Externally, there's tons and tons of tools. So the question here is the poll: what's the most important tool in your ecosystem delivering training other than an LMS? And this kind of a loaded question because, we'll let so we won't spoil it.
Yeah. Yeah, we use a lot of stuff. We use a knowledge base, and we use blogging, and what else? Communities, AHA for tracking what people want as requests to the product. We use a ton of different things that build in, and then of course our product also connects to hundreds of other things as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And yeah, certainly. So certainly from authoring tools in virtual classrooms and things like that, what we see now that is really important, especially externally, is the concept of tying in the marketing automation and
Yeah.
CRMs. Marketing automation for all the training folks there, it's probably not something that comes to mind, but think of the notification in your engine, notification engine in your LMS times 1,000. And
Yeah.
so it's, instead of just saying, hey, your training is due, it's like, let me first find a group of all the people that started this training, didn't finish it, and haven't touched it in the last 30 days, and let's send them these 3 emails to try to get them re-engaged. That's marketing automation, for example. And so you see a lot more of that in externally facing. Let's go ahead. We're sharing this poll result. Let's see what we got. So 23% HRIS. So any of those folks have strong employee requirements for sure.
Right. It's all connected.
CRM,
And,
37% CRM.
yeah.
Number 1 CRM, Salesforce. Everybody has content or
Single sign on. Yeah.
their customers.
All good stuff that we use too.
Yep, their customers and sharing customer data, and Salesforce and in general is going to bring that business data that we need to do that great reporting that we're talking about. Let's see real quick from
Yeah,
a,
you know what used to be a nice to have, or like one of the things that set you apart from the crowd in the LMS space, to be able to connect to all these things, is now an absolute must. It's a you see, because what you're noticing, like you're saying, John, is that people want to connect with the tools that they already have. They don't want to have to adopt anything new or learn anything new. It's like, look, does it connect to this, or can I use APIs to pull this data? And I think that's an important thing. That's one of the things that we are really focused on, is to make sure that we're giving people what they need where they are and with what they have, rather than have to adopt something all brand new and learn something new.
mm-hmm. And it's not just whether you have APIs and can you potentially spend a bunch of money, time, and effort to tie these two systems together, but it's also that concept of organizations or vendor solutions are building lots of pre-built APIs to
Yep.
common systems so that even non-technical
Connectors.
anybody's can just turn them on and check a box and share data from GoToMeeting with your
Yep.
CRM and LMS. So understanding that
Important.
ecosystem is super important. All right, let's close these poll results. Hide this poll and we'll go on to the next one. All right, cool. So
Yeah, the further
deploying.
along you are in maturity, the more you're looking at those types of things, and even in that, like you're saying, in the very beginning stages, when you're planning out what you need, you should be thinking forward and thinking like, when do I want to connect these dots, and what kind of data do I want flowing in and out of the LMS as it relates to the training of our learners?
It's really not extraneous data to learn about that ecosystem. Now, it might seem like, why is all this important? In addition to snapping in that we've talked about, it turns out that a lot of the systems inside, especially the customer learning ecosystem, have overlap with what an LMS does. For example, we just talked about how marketing automation is kind of like notifications on steroids, but there is overlap of capabilities there, and there's a lot of different areas like that. And so, smart buyers, when defining this, understand, what the
Yeah,
parameter, what's not going to change, so that they're not worried about buying something that they're never going to use anyway. If there's
yeah.
existing gamification or commerce engine, for example. So
And where
deploying.
the future's really going, just real quick on that, where the future's going is where, like with Qualtrics, we have Qualtrics now as a part of SAP, and just thinking through what they do. I mean, you think about this now, it's like, let's say that you have a clothing store, and all of a sudden one of the clothing store areas, is getting bad reviews or something like that. You could pull that data, and it automatically triggers a course on customer service or something for that drops it right into that team's LMS, like right into their I don't know, course library, and then assigns it to all the people that work there. I mean, this type of thing where you're really connecting all of those dots, to me, that's fascinating, and that's way above my head of what I know. But man, that's the kind of stuff that I think, if we
High
can get
pay
to,
grade. Yeah,
pretty cool.
high pay
Okay.
grade stuff, but it is getting
Yeah.
there. Kat has a question: is if we could point to any strategy documents that talk about both internal and external deployments and requirements, and we'll follow up afterwards. But a good place to go is talentedlearning.com. That's all we've written about the last 6 years, different flavors of that.
You got
So
a lot of resources.
we got some content. We got some content on that. So deploying and continuously improving. This is another real
Yeah.
important part of the life cycle, and I get variations of this question all the time. So as a technology or learning system technology analyst and consultant, I'm obviously involved in the technology purchase, and it seems like the technology purchase comes first. Organizations get the infrastructure, the umbrella, so to speak, and then they start fitting the content underneath there. And so, very commonly organizations are saying, well, what about the content? Do we just do a little bit now? Do we just pick one audience? Do we, should we develop this whole curriculum, the whole black belt structure, and roll that out at once? What if we roll out a little piece and it doesn't work? So there's a lot of concerns about go big, go small, go fast,
Yeah.
and how to get that content out, especially when it's your first initiative. So my question to you, Mike, is how do you think about that? I mean, that's a big topic. What was your approach to that, right or wrong?
For us, it went in stages, most definitely. Is it when we were first looking at the Litmus University, and we wanted to rebrand it and make it something better than it was, we came up with the dojo idea, and then that theme, we just started playing on that theme, right? To say, okay, let's do belts, because you think about in karate, that's that's what they do, right? They go through the white belt to black belt. And we thought this makes a whole lot of sense for us because we're going to have people at the white belt level when they first start. And then we'll have a green belt, which is our company color before joining SAP. And then the black belt is the highest, right? We'll keep it nice and simple. So what we did is we created all of those white belt courses and we launched those first. And we had people starting to take those and they were excited about the next. And we would keep saying, okay, the green belt's coming, green belt's coming. And then we would launch those. Then we would launch the black belt courses, which at that point, people would be as certified as you possibly could be with in our product, right? You know what everything does and you're confident with the system. And then we went back and said, because we had a lot of customers say, hey, I love these belt courses, they're wonderful, but they're a little bit long, and I don't need to know absolutely everything. Is there anything I could just get an overview on? So then we went back and we used a different medium because we use Articulate Rise for those. And we did more of the traditional text-based images, quizzes, those types of things. And then we went back and created a whole host of fast track courses. And these were all video-based, animated voiceover. And just, I mean, tell you, those are just fantastic because in 4 or 5 minutes, what we realized is that people could get 65, 75% of the way in dashboards or the admin panel or the people tab or the teams tab, where, I mean, we have the deep dive too, but then you also have these that can just like, okay, got it. That's enough for me to get started. And they're fun and engaging and interesting. And then we also, again, still have the belt courses we still had the belt courses to back it up. So that's how we deployed it and how we rolled everything out was in stages. We probably should have done the fast track first, but we were thinking about they need to know everything there is to know about the product. So we need to get that out first as the base, and then we'll start building around it with different resources based upon what we're hearing from the audience. So that was our approach to deploying the content in the dojo.
Excellent. Excellent. And that aligns, it does align with, what we see out in the marketplace. So with the podcast and these webinars and all the interviews, almost every interview I as part of this process, I ask about advice. What's your advice to somebody getting started, since so many people are? And I would say the advice you just gave right there falls in line with almost what everybody says. Not everybody, but I bet 70% of the time the advice is get started. Start and
do something.
Yeah, because you can't do it all at once. It's a process that you're never going to end. It's not an event. And so start with your business case. Find something that's manageable, that's going to have impact, something that's measurable, and start there and do exactly those things. Measure it. Find out what's working, turn around and constantly improve that and go through a cycle of evaluation, feedback, and improvement, and predicting your results the next time and measuring, and just wash and repeat to go through there. And over time, over 2 or 3 years, which will happen in a second, it feels like you'll develop, just like yourself, broad performance-based and curriculum-based content that meets the needs of different learners in different times of their life cycle of their maturity as a customer. And so I think that's the collective best advice that we hear out in the industry. One of the things Avi here from the audience ask is an example of a parent-client relationship, from an organizational structure, with an LMS and extended enterprise. And I feel free to weigh in here, Mike. But I think it's pretty simple. It's like you got your LMS, and then underneath there, from an organizational standpoint, your main categories of employees, partners, and customers. And then underneath each one of those really depends on the sophistication of your organization. If there's different customer brands or different types of partners or different types of employees.
Resellers for us.
Resellers, sure. So that's generally, it's not rocket science. It's usually a pretty simple umbrella. As organizations get bigger and more global and more diverse, then certainly it gets hairier and scarier, but it doesn't have to be. It can be really, really simple structure.
Yeah. Try to get it back to the simplicity again. Go back to what you're trying to accomplish and look at it from there and say, all right, which one of these am I going after? And right from there, do I need multiple instances because I need them very separate, or do I want to have even more simple and have them in one? Can I manage that? What does that look like 3 years from now? Some simple questions can really help inform what you're going to do in the future.
Yep. If you plan some convoluted big thing, you'll never get anywhere.
You'll never roll out. That's right. I've seen that a lot.
Yeah.
Especially with really big organizations that, we have some organizations that have 30,000. Our biggest organization has 2 million people. And so rolling that out all at once just would have never worked. So it was in stages, it was in pilots, it was in. So there's some other things to think about depending on your scale as well.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. But without a doubt, there is, in the industry, people following your trend of that
Yeah.
short-based performance
Yep.
support as well as the career path and certifications. Sometimes simultaneously, sometimes they're mutually exclusive. Um, Certainly a lot of live training events, and in this poll, whatever mix of others. Feel free to answer in the question, but just curious to see what the audience has on, what type of customer education do you think is the best and most effective?
Here we go. Oh
Time
yeah, definitely a mix.
time full. See the
Yeah.
mix up. It keeps on closing my poll window. There we go. Mix of
Okay.
these,
Yeah.
75%. That really, boy, that's a great trend that you don't hear necessarily talked about all the time. But it's really important because just think about 5 years ago, those short-paced performance support on demand was something that instructional designers talked about, but you didn't really see in action.
Yeah. That's
Everything
true.
was about courses versus resources, and 75%. That's a big shift in just a
Makes
few
a
years.
lot of sense. Yeah.
Big shift in a few years. So, all
Yeah.
right. Well, we're just about there here. So, life cycle content strategies. Whoop, we'll go back there. One. So,
Uh-oh. Going off
I
the
guess
pole.
we talked about your content strategy already
Yeah.
here
Yep.
from how you developed it. But where I started off the presentation today, I talked about how organizations have sometimes an existing customer experience that's already defined. Something that they're focusing on well outside the training and development. And so for your organization, where did you find, yeah, as you came into this job and came into doing this, was that customer experience already developed, or are you part of the group that used this the training experience to help develop the customer experience? What was your experience? A lot of
It
experience.
was a lot of experience. It was a ladder, John, for sure. It was us. We were able to build it as we went along because, again, before I started working on this, it was our digital strategy. There just really wasn't one. We put up a product, right? I mean, we sell Litmus, so we need to use it as well. So we absolutely do. And so we stood up an instance and called it the university, and it got a little bit of traffic, but there really wasn't any buzz around it or anything. So when I came aboard, we really decided to circle the wagons and figure out what in the world can we do to really drive engagement and get people excited. And we realized, I mean, it's create a great place where they want to be, and then it's cool. They go and like, whoa, this is kind of neat to be in here, and content that they're going to enjoy and want to consume. And I mean, and it's simple, and they can get to it quickly, and so on and so on. So for us, it was pretty specific around those pieces to build that experience where somebody would say that it's not, oh, I have to go do this training, that it's, wow, I can't wait to jump in or see what's next, and oh, what have they got for me today? And that's the experience that we wanted to build. And I think you can only do that by creating good stuff. I really, and I think if you look at our instance and you look at some others, it's night and day. I mean, we spent the extra time to really go in and customize our instance to make it look great and be a place where people wanted to come. So for us, that was pretty much it. That we knew that they needed a place to get best practices and product knowledge and to understand that. And we gave them a place that was really fun. So, and if you want to see another really great instance, go to. Have you heard of Fortnite? Anybody out there? Your kids play this game? Yeah. So Epic Games has an incredible customized Litmus instance as well. If you go to, I think it's Unreal Engine. I think it's something like that, or just go to Litmus or go to epicgames.com and then go to the training side, and you'll see what they've been able to do with the product. So it's just interesting because then you're like, whoa, and that's what their whole job is, right? Is to pull these kids in and us in and me in and just keep us playing. So yeah, I think it's really an important thing.
Remember, I started this conversation. That's the hottest segment, customer learning, the hottest segment in learning technology. It's all the
Yeah.
way down to video games,
They
for
use the
sure.
same stuff. I mean, that we need to be
Yeah.
using those quick hits of just like, here's something great, something novel that's going to be memorable. I think we as instructional designers or folks that who run training departments need to keep that in mind and look back at all of our PowerPoints that may or may not be just really stale and you go, man, this is what we're serving them, and yeah, it's no wonder that the engagement is lower if that's the case.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just from
Last
my
question.
perspective. Sorry.
Yeah, well, that's why you're the expert here. What's the what? one last question here on this life cycle, before we move on quickly. How about the customers that have been customers for a long time? I don't know,
Yeah.
5 or 10 years. Do you treat them any different? Do you worry about it? Do you figure, they're 10 years customers, they got what they need? Like, what's a quick strategy or way to think about those in general, or how you do at SAP?
Yeah, for us specifically, talking about again Litmus and our audience, who are people who are Litmus SAP Litmus customers. Uh, First of all, there aren't a lot of people that stay that long, to be honest. Like we see a lot of people who come in and out of their businesses and inherit Litmus, right? And then they become the new LMS admins, and then again, it starts that process all over, so that we have a nice place for them to go and people to talk to, and what we've talked about earlier on in that life cycle. They begin at the beginning and they start again. But for folks who have been, what we're really starting to roll out is to look at it not just product knowledge and understanding the product itself, but now it's looking at, let's really jump into use cases. Let's really jump into how do you design effective training that isn't going to suck, I guess would be the best way to put it, right? How are you going to design things to increase engagement, and then building out training and sharing our best practices with that. So what we're trying to do now is that we've built a very solid foundation for the product knowledge and those types of things. Now we're really moving into to treat our customers well and give them more is more of the best practices and thought leadership around instructional design, around selling it to your bosses, around reporting and ROI. Those types of things are where we're going to move to the higher levels in the hierarchy, right? Where people are like, okay, I've learned all that, and now, okay, yeah, that would be really great to learn the 5 skills to create a really great training, right? Or whatever it might be. So for us, that's how we look at that, and how we continue to keep things fresh for people.
The last thing I wanted to talk about, Mike, before we let you and the audience go here, is all that is great, but how do you know if it's working from a feedback
Yeah.
standpoint? What's your strategy of either formally or informally soliciting feedback so that you can get what you need to really maximize your efficiency on the next round of improvements?
Well, there are really 3 things there. One, we hear from our customers all the time. They're calling us, they're putting suggestions in AHA, they are really driving what we put out in our newest features and functionality. 75% or more of the things that we adopt into the product and things that we put in there are all customer suggestions. So we're hearing from them all of the time. So we know they're using it and they're finding things that they could have improved on, and they're telling us. Our account managers work with them too. They're their direct line of contact. So we talk to those account managers and try to figure out, what are the things you're hearing? Are they happy? Are they having issues? So we have that as a data point too in the kind of interview style there. And then we also, of course, do surveys with them as well to get their satisfaction. But and then with our bigger clients, we actually have our CABs, right? Our customers advisory boards, where we meet somewhere, wherever they are, regionally, and then they all come in and we just hash it out and try to figure out what their experience is like. So I guess there are 4, not 3 things, but really, really important to us is to get that customer view. And we're continually looking for better ways and other ways to do that. But we hear from our customers quite a bit, which is really exciting, because I feel like I did back in 2011, I thought if I was going to hitch my wagon to an LMS and knowing that it was going to be a multi-year thing, I don't want to change it after we've done it. They're going to be around a while. I want it to be with people I trust and people that I know will have my back and will listen to my suggestions. And that's what and that's what I've always had as a customer with SAP Litmus, and what I want to continue to push as the CLO and head of customer experience with the product as well.
Wow, great. And for that 8-year question, we got a comment from one of your clients, Scott Warner here, that's got 8 years of Litmus under his belt. So
yes,
perhaps you should reach out to him and
answer
that 8-year question for you. All right, well, excellent. Well, thanks, exciting. Mike. Thanks so much, audience, for attending and answering all the polls and participating here as we had this great conversation. In conclusion, the learning systems and learning initiatives for customer learning is the hottest segment of the industry, and organizations need to look at it in a very holistic way of that customer learning experience life cycle, but then also how that customer training life cycle aligns with that and provides value. And so today we talked about technology, about building the business case, about how to define requirements and tools and strategies for deployment and improving and getting feedback and evaluating that and improving, and just different ways to think about that from an analyst, from an LMS company, and from a broader market perspective to help aid you today. So Mike, thanks so much for joining
You
me
bet.
today. For those of you who want to hear some more of Mike, just last week, I believe, on talentedlearning.com, you can go to 2 posts down, and you'll see a podcast interview we did together. We're talking about parallel, but certainly different things today, and you get some more information. But thanks everybody for coming. You can reach out to me or Mike from the invitations that you got, or directly here, and or sales at Litmos is another one, and there's some legalese for everybody. And
Read all that quick.
read all that quick before we quit. Oh, it's gone. But we did say that. So welcome everybody. Have a great day. We'll see you next month, and thanks. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Bye.